terms of how does it happen, how does it get managed, people. There is no way that I could do it if I was the person in charge. I want to be honest, because it is amazing how often people say they want to glorify it, and I have so much respect for people who, you look at their Twitter bio and it's a single company, or it's a series of them, and you see, there was this company and then formerly this one exit, formerly this one exit. I've always run a lot of different things at the same time. I think it's made me really good at,
wow, goddamn, why did that guy do that to me? Why did that person do that to me? Why did that person rip me off? Because you still have some of that junk in your life. At least I did. Maybe you don't. Keep in mind, I didn't have kids until I was 51 years old. I didn't have kids because I knew I wasn't ready to be a father. I was married to this business, to this dream that I had. To get somewhere else, you must leave where you are. You will never, ever experience great change in your life unless you're willing to give up something that you have right now.
Lots of people who weren't used to purchasing online started doing so after the pandemic. If you're not online, you gotta do so. You gotta push it. If you are a store owner selling things on voice search, make sure you're leveraging it. You can also get your podcasts, your materials, your content on voice search. That's another good trend that you should start leveraging, and it's extra traffic that you didn't have.
The thing that I'm super passionate about, as a lot of you know, is I think work ethic is the one thing that's super controllable. You're only so pretty, you're only so smart, you're only so fast, you're only what you are. The one thing that I'm fascinated by as you sit here, the way you were parented, where you were born, what you got, the one thing that actually is in your control is the decisions of what you do with your hand.
If you don't understand the type of content that you want to create, you're not going to do a good job. If you don't write content that you're passionate about, that you love, it won't come across as great content and it won't do well. You need to research your audience. You need to come up with audience personas. What questions is your audience asking? What problems do they have that you can help solve? How can you provide value to them? And by knowing this, it ensures that not only are you writing content that you love, but also that other people want to hear about, which will help you rank higher as well.
I do think, as Sydney mentioned, that the biggest missed opportunity in content is playing it too safe. This is a short film that was produced by Caress, the body wash. So it's the world's first touch-activated film, and the way that it worked was that they had these series of videos. I hate it when that happens. Oh, the last line of this film is, could this be love forever, right? The name of the film is Love Forever. Could this be love forever?
Think about how many businesses are starting on social media every year just running ads. Of the 18,000 marketers they surveyed are planning to increase their social spend in 2022. That means that in order to stand out, you'll have to get creative and differentiate your brand from the rest of the competition. You'll need to get super creative if you want to stand out in 2022. Social networks are now the second most important channel for online brand research after search engines, according to Hootsuite and We're Social Digital's 2021 report.
I think just the curiosity of being fascinated with being able to build something from scratch and make a computer do things that it wasn't intended to do, I think was always really attractive and appealing. Starting a company to start a company won't last. And if there's not something that's going to keep you motivated through the really hard times, because there are a ton of them, if you're not passionate enough, you won't last through that period. And so I think you've got to be passionate about a problem. You have to have at least learned how to sell something to someone at some point in your life.
Welcome to Chicago Founder Stories here at 1871, Chicago's digital startup hub. We have a great lineup tonight. We have Justin Howard, the founder of Sprout Social. Justin, thanks for being here.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
So those of you who know Sprout Social know it's an exciting, what an exciting company it is. I was talking to someone coming in and they said, tell them we love his products. Everywhere I've gone, you hear that from people. But for those who don't know, how would you best describe what Sprout is?
Yeah, so Sprout's a social media management software platform that helps businesses more effectively manage their social. So we have about 15,000, a little over 15,000 customers around the world.
It's a SaaS
business,
software type thing.
Who rely on our product to manage their Twitter and Facebook and Google Plus and LinkedIn and their social channels to get more connected to their customers.
You said you have 15,000 businesses on it.
Yeah.
And what kind of scale? How many in the U.S. beyond?
Yeah, so we're our customers are in over 100 countries now. We're certainly have a large number of U.S. customers. I think 35% of our business is international.
Wow.
Just last week, we actually launched our first international market in a localized fashion. So Latin America with Spanish and Brazilian Portuguese. That's our first non-English offering, which we just launched last week.
Oh, that's cool. We'll look forward to getting into it. But you're not a native Chicagoan. You grew up in Northern California.
Yep.
And as I was preparing for this, I understand that you were part of what you're doing is you're always selling something.
Yeah.
And but talk about it. Were there things that people saw you growing up, they'd say, yeah, I knew he'd end up doing something interesting in technology or innovation.
Yeah,
When did these things first start to show in your early life?
So I mean, I think the way entrepreneurs are wired, you've always got ideas and you're trying different things. But getting involved with technology early started with me. Actually, I'd gotten a dirt bike. I lived in rural California, a very small town. I'd gotten a dirt bike as I think a birthday present.
Got to be a popular thing in rural California.
Yeah, I mean it was great, but I promptly traded that for a Commodore computer and started teaching myself how to program. And
not as cool.
Not as nearly as cool. Although I was too young then to probably care what cool was. But so I taught myself how to program and just started getting really infatuated with technology. Started building computers, and this was back when. It was just XTs, very simple computers. But
so this is like 80s, early 90s?
Yeah, so late 80s.
Late 80s.
Yeah.
So this was, this is before so many things happened. So you're doing this, and what got you excited about it? What intrigued you so much?
It's tough to say, but I think as a curious person, technology has so much to offer, right? Mm-hmm. Because there's so many unknowns and there's so many things that you can manipulate technology to make it do, and things that have never been done before. So I think just the curiosity of being fascinated with being able to build something from scratch and make a computer do things that it wasn't intended to do, I think was always really attractive and appealing.
Well, that's cool. Can you hear us in back, by the way? Great. Cool. Okay, so you might want to talk a little bit louder for someone back there. All right, so you go ahead and get your first job, and you marry two things that you seem to like doing as a youth. You love technology, and you were selling things and doing different things as you grew up as a kind of young entrepreneur. Talk about that job, how you chose it, that transition into the workforce.
Yeah, so actually one of my first jobs was selling cellular phones. It was just an after-school job that I understood the technology and was at least mediocre with dealing with people. So I got involved in that, and then transitioned after school. I went to work for a software training company. It was actually in Southern California. So moved there, started working for that organization just as, being passionate about technology, and I was working with companies, helping them.
And is this New Horizons?
Yeah, New Horizons.
New Horizons. Company. So what did they do?
So a global brand. They were a publicly traded company, but it's basically just a global organization that has classroom training for different software products. So I would help large organizations figure out their.
What was like the most common product that someone might have experienced if they experienced New Horizons back in the day?
So if you got like Cisco certified, or if you got an MCSE,
okay.
Some of these technology vendor certifications that would go through us.
Okay, so they're in this business. They're out selling the world. It says like you're selling companies, or you're selling?
Yeah, to companies. Okay. So if they needed to roll out new technology, we were the training arm of that.
Got it. Yep. Okay. So you go to work for them. What do they hire you to do? As
just a sales guy.
Yeah. So
just a sales guy.
So what are you selling?
I think the first thing I was selling the day I started, they had me calling people, our existing customers, asking if they wanted to buy CD-ROMs with training programs on them. And then throughout the years, it became
CD-ROMs. Now, see, that is a blast from the past.
Very
Everybody,
old, right?
Who remembers CD-ROMs? Anybody remember? Oh yeah.
So that's how I started, and then got better and better, and
all right,
eventually.
Let's go back. So you're a young guy. You've sort of sold phones when you were in school and done different things, but now it's just for real. This is your job. This is how you're going to pay your mortgage, pay your rent, the whole deal. You go out to sell this training. You don't know anything about these companies. I mean, it's not like you worked for one of them before, right? So how'd it go when you first started? What'd you learn when you went out there pounding the pavement?
Yeah, I mean,
what was it like?
You learn pretty quickly that you don't know anything, right? And that's humbling and humiliating, and you learn quickly what it is that you need to do to make a difference for these people who are buying whatever it is they're buying from you.
Do you think you knew that before you first called or after you first called? Did you learn it once you start calling on people and you go, God, I know less than I think?
I think, you know, you're riding on the ego the first couple calls, and then after a while you realize you really don't know. And then then you figure out what you have to do to be successful and be a little more scrappy about it.
So how do you figure that out? Because you can do things wrong, but process of elimination takes a long time, not necessarily randomly get to what's right.
Yeah, I mean, this was a largely commissioned job, so you don't screw up for too long when you got to, you know, pay bills and feed yourself. So you learn pretty quickly, and just being in it, kind of sink or swim.
So what were those early lessons you learned?
I think that one of the earliest sales lessons that I learned was product mastery is probably the most important thing. You can be persuasive, you can follow sales methodologies and do those things, but if people don't trust that you know more about their problem than they do, they're just not going to buy from you. And I
So
think
how'd you develop that? So, because I mean, these are obviously, you know, companies that have fairly sophisticated companies.
Yeah.
So how'd you get smarter on what they needed to do than they were?
Soaked up everything I could. Reading, same thing that got me into technology in the first place, just curiosity. I wanted to learn everything I could until the point where, you know, they could consider me kind of an expert in the field.
Interesting. So you start selling there. So you're out there selling. How long did it take before? I know you were very successful there ultimately. Yeah. How long did it take you to really hit the inflection point in being able to be as productive, that level of productivity?
Yeah, I think, and I've experienced this a few times, I think it takes about 3 years to really get good at something, maybe more like 5 to really master it.
So about 3 years start getting good, 5 you master it?
Yeah.
And I understand you were the top rep there for a while?
Yeah.
So
and that was around the same time I started getting a little disinterested. Was you've kind of mastered it, and it's the challenge kind of wears off, and then it was kind of on to the next thing after that.
So, and where were you with them? You started in Southern California.
Started in Southern California. We opened a new office in Las Vegas. So I moved to Las Vegas on my 21st birthday.
How was living in Las Vegas?
A lot different than you'd think. It was actually a really cool city to live in. At the time, this was before the housing bust and a bunch of that stuff. So I had a blast. But it's a good transitional place. It's probably not a place you settle down.
And then where'd you go after that?
And then after that, so met some friends out there who were from Chicago. They came out here and had their wedding here and moved back here. I was in that wedding. That was my first experience with Chicago. And then I loved it. It was in June, so I loved it. And
we bait and switch with that.
Yeah. And then I think I moved here like a month later and with the same company.
There's a Hunter was here earlier speaking, and he played for the Bears, and there was a joke. If the Northwestern won the Rose Bowl, they recruited the top kid from Hawaii. And they said, why'd you pick Northwestern? He said, it's like Hawaii. There are beaches and water.
Yeah.
Someone said, have you been there any time besides the summer?
Yeah.
So it does work. So you come here, you're excited about it, you're a hotshot sales guy.
Yeah.
Did you move here with New Horizons?
Yeah, so I moved here with New Horizons, and then I stayed on with them probably for a couple years.
All right, so you're doing well. You're a top-ranked national sales guy. You're living the life here. It's beautiful, having fun.
Yep.
It's a great city to be young in. Why change? And what do you change to?
Yeah, so it was just kind of the challenge after a while. It was...
what year is this?
Good question. So 2003. It's probably about 2007.
Okay.
And wanted to do something different. Just you get the itch. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have exexperienced that, and you want to
start a new company next week. So yeah, I get the itch.
Yeah. So I actually left that job. Had probably a 6-month stint at starting a new company of my own, which I didn't know enough yet. I wanted to start something. It wasn't an idea that I necessarily. It was still in the training space, so it's kind of like more of the same. I didn't have the fire for it that I probably needed to get it off the ground. And so that lasted for a little while, and then I ended up connecting with a company called Learn.com, which is enterprise software, and really liked the team there. And so that's where I was following that and just before starting Sprout. Got
it. So and talk about just a minute about your first time. I mean, you got out 6 months is a pretty quick learning.
Yeah.
What were the most important things you think you learned from kind of a false start as an entrepreneur that helped you when you did it, so successfully?
So similar to kind of when you get started with sales was I was carrying a lot of ego out of this previous job. I was doing very well and could sell, could be very successful in that role. And I took that ego into starting this new thing, and just totally overestimated, my ability to start something from scratch.
Right.
Yeah.
And what allowed you to get out so quickly?
I didn't have a lot of means at the time, and if I couldn't be
a lot of guys will work a job and do it on the side because they don't want to say that
Yeah.
they're wrong. You obviously learned to cut bait.
Yeah. At the time, it was just it didn't look like it was going to go anywhere for a while, and I could sort of keep going at it and trying it, or I could learn more. And which was why the next opportunity was so perfect, because they were a software company. They were a little smaller than Sprout is now, but I felt like I could learn a lot, and I realized trying this thing that I didn't know enough yet.
Got it.
Yeah.
So you go work for Learn, you said about 2-3 years?
Yeah, I think it was 3, 4.
3 years. So one of the things we talk about at Chicago Founder Stories is founder market fit, and there's a couple parts to yours that I think are really interesting. And so I just wanted to explore a little bit how your experience both as a salesperson at Learn.com and then in helping Learn.com develop certain skills kind of led to Sprout. So take us through that story of not just what you were doing, but how you got the idea for the need to sort of start working with social media as a salesperson.
So one of the really cool things about Learn was this was the first time I was actually involved in selling software. We were doing training before, and this was my first exposure to a product team, to building against requirements of these large enterprise corporations and figuring out how product marketing worked and all these sorts of things. So that gave me a lot of exposure to a lot of the things that we're dealing with now. Along the way, I've always been sort of a technology geek, right? So along the way, I would tinker with things and find ways that I could be more effective at selling through technology, using things like LinkedIn and blogs and these different ways that I could leverage technology to do my job better. And as a result, the company kind of tapped me to help develop materials to help the other sales reps understand how they could use technology, how they could use it to be more effective. And that kind of research and process was when I started to figure out that there was something really interesting about what Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn could do for the brand and consumer relationship. And through that research, discovered kind of this gap in the market. And that's where the idea from Sprout really came from. I wanted to use social to do these things. The tools didn't yet exist. It was all geared toward the individual.
So what was the workaround? How did you make it work back then?
Again, being a sponge, learning as much as I could, probably going to an extent that most people wouldn't. So I did it the hard way, and we knew that there was probably an easier way to do it.
All right, so you're using social media, and was it helpful to you with your customers?
At Learn?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
How was it? I guess that the other people at Learn started wanting to learn more about this themselves.
So the first thing was I put out. We were selling learning management software, which is something that big organizations use to deploy talent management and those sorts of things. I put out a blog post on what you should put in your RFP if you're buying learning management software. Certainly entirely catered toward the things that we did. But I did it just as an individual, and I said, here's my credentials, and here's the things that you should be looking for. And I started getting heads of organizational development from these large companies commenting on this blog post, asking me to get in touch. They wanted to talk. So by putting this was like the earliest form of content marketing. People would start approaching me, and then I'd be getting deals from other people's territory. So that everyone wanted to figure out how can they leverage some of these things.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And what were the most successful strategies back at that point?
At that point, it was pretty limited to. I think LinkedIn was pretty popular at the time for what we were trying to do. Blogs, that was about it. So Twitter hadn't really caught on yet. In fact, I don't even think I knew about it at that point until I started doing this research. And then Facebook was just a personal tool. So it was pretty much LinkedIn at that point.
Got it. So you're in the early stages of using this, and of social media emerging as a business tool.
Yeah.
So given that, what made it the right time to start the company?
Identified this problem. The key to it all was I had the right people around me at that time. My co-founder, Aaron Rankin, one of our other co-founders, Gilbert Lahr and Peter Song. We were all excited about the same idea at the same time. We started building against this product in our spare time. So Sprout.
So back up, because this is an interesting story how your team came together.
Yeah, yeah.
So walk us through it. So you're the sales rep using this very successfully, blogs and different things. And I think at one point, didn't you train some of your other people in the company on how to do this?
Yeah, yeah.
So you're kind of the in-house expert trying to do this. And then who was the first person you were kind of tossing the idea about, hey, maybe I should just be an in-house expert.
Yeah.
Maybe we should go do this for other companies.
Yeah, so my roommate. My roommate at the time was Gil. He's one of our co-founders now at Sprout. And we started just conceptualizing what we thought what the solution looked like to this problem that I was having down the hall on my day job.
And what was Gil doing at the time?
He was doing design work for a company called Freeman, which does environmental design, trade shows, things like that. So he was just doing 3D and graphic design.
So he's a designer, so your roommate's a designer, you guys are tossing this around at night.
Yep.
And what makes it go from just a conversation between a couple of roommates into like moving to that next level?
So my wife, girlfriend at the time, now wife, was friends with our other co-founder, Aaron Rankin's wife. We went on a double date. This was around the time that Gil and I are throwing around this idea. We went to, I don't remember where it was now, but we were just having drinks and talking about what we did, and this topic came up of this idea that we had. And Aaron let me know that he was an engineer, and a pretty good one. I remember him saying it that way. So we just started talking about this idea, and we got kind of energized, and then we met either the following day or a couple days later to hammer out if we wanted to work on this together. And then that ended up being the core crew.
So the three of you are tossing this idea around, and you start working on the side, right?
Yep.
So how long were you working on the side before you had a product? Is it something you could go get in front of for potential customers?
Yeah, so we were probably working on it for 3 or 4 months before we demoed it to anybody. We were working on it for probably 6 months before we opened up. It was just a beta at the time. And that was around the time Twitter kind of caught on to what we were doing. And,
so before we go there, how do you decide who the first person to show your product to is?
I think we just tweeted about it and saw who showed up. Our very first customer was the State Bar of Texas. We certainly don't know anyone there. So it was just I think we put it out on Twitter and they came.
Interesting. How many followers did you have on Twitter at the time?
Couldn't have been more than a couple hundred. I mean, I'm not that charming on Twitter, so I don't think it was many.
Wow, so you, interesting. And we like to talk a lot about product market fit here as well. So clearly you understood it because you'd lived with the problem and you were thinking about how to do this. But, one of the interesting things about product market fit is we all think we have it all figured out before we get out there.
Yeah.
And then we learn a lot where the lean startup tactics come from.
Yep.
Just go back before you'd figured it all out. When you just first had that, when you showed them the State Bar of Texas, what was your hypothesis? What was your belief about what the product, who it ought to be targeting and what it needed to do? And then let's talk a little bit about what you learned.
Yeah. So the initial idea was that social is this new kind of confusing thing to a lot of businesses out there. They weren't staffed for it. It wasn't something that they were used to. So we thought that we were going to make social media easier to understand, something that they could be just get up and running quickly. They don't have to know all the ins and outs. We can help them make it simpler. And that was the kind of the strategy with the first version of the product. But what we learned very quickly was that who really needed help and the people who really most appreciated what we were doing was a more sophisticated customer. People who were not saying that we don't understand social, it was people who were saying social doesn't do all the things that we need it to do. Sprout adds some of that functionality.
So you went from novice users, kind of we got to figure this social thing out.
Yep.
Don't really know what that means as a target, and you really shifted pretty dramatically to power users.
Yep.
Sounds like people like, hey, we're all in. We just need more horsepower.
Yep.
How'd you figure that out?
So we were observing who was using the product and kind of what parts of it they were using. We had a couple early users. Groupon was a big early user of ours, and a couple other ones like them who, those were the ones we were getting the most feedback from, and they were saying, hey, can you add this? Can you add that? And it was much more on the complex side of things than the, make this easier for us.
Got it. So having Groupon as kind of a customer that didn't fit your profile at all.
Yeah.
We'll talk a little bit about how you first connected with them, but
yeah.
It didn't fit your profile at all. I mean, you'd say Groupon at the time, fastest growing company in the country for sure. Hard to say they just fell off the turnip truck on anything.
Yeah.
So you now look at Groupon and you see boy, we could do a lot more for them.
Yeah.
And then when did you start, at what point did you start saying, hey, let's target more Groupons?
Yeah. So we spent probably the first year building the first version of our product. During that time, at some point, Groupon came along. We realized that what we ultimately wanted to build and what was going to be the most valuable thing we could build was something very different, more sophisticated. So we launched our first product, and about a week later, we decided that we were going to scratch it entirely and rebuild from the ground up. So we spent the first year on this first one, decided it was no good, and spent another year building the second version, which is ultimately what's in the market today.
Okay, great. And somewhere along the way, your tweeting leads you to a meeting at Twitter. Talk about this story. It's really interesting.
So
fairly early on, right?
Yeah, this was still back in like the first 6 months or so, maybe even within the first 3 or 4 months. I don't know exactly how, but some folks at Twitter came across our website or a blog post or something like that and kind of caught wind of what we were doing. This was when they were still very small. It was probably 30 or 40 people at the time. And they tweeted at us and said, hey, we'd love to learn more about what you guys are up to. So that was, certainly it's been a critical relationship for us and a pivotal point. So we went out and met with them and showed them what we were building, and they dug the ideas and asked us a lot of questions, and then ended up introducing us to some of their investors, some of their earliest investors. And that kind of got the ball rolling toward, we think that there's something viable here. We think there's something bigger than maybe we first set out to build.
Interesting. So let's talk about the first time you raised money.
Yeah.
So you're starting to get a little bit of traction. Was it 09, 10?
Yeah, so this would have been the beginning of 2010.
Beginning of 2010.
Yeah.
So you have some really, your first investors are some of the most accomplished entrepreneurs, not just in Chicago, but in the country.
Yep.
With Brad Keywell and Eric Lefkowski at Lightbank. Talk a little bit about how that match was made.
Yeah. So you'll notice a trend here, but I was tweeted about the fact that Brad and Eric might be getting a fund together. And at this point, we had spent a lot of time out in Silicon Valley talking with a lot of investors out there, all very nice, but all very clear about the fact that they felt like we could build a better company in California. And that wasn't interesting to us at the time. So heard about this fund that Brad and Eric were working on, found their email address, shot them an email that night, and then we met up probably the next day or a couple days later, and that's how we originally got connected with them.
Well, before Justin and I had met, I was talking to Brad about something else, and I'd heard someone said they might raise a fund, and I said, do you think you'd raise a fund? And he said, I don't like managing other people's money. I love working on our own ideas, and I love working with really interesting entrepreneurs. And I said, and he's like, do you know Justin at Sprout Social? Like, we've had more, it's been more exciting to work with them, and he talks about that like, as exciting as what they've done with Groupon and Inner Workings and Echo Global and all those.
Yeah, great to hear, yeah.
But one of the questions that came in is about, you're out in the Valley.
Yeah.
You've chosen to build the company here. I think two parts to the question. One is, what was your thought on building the company in Chicago versus Silicon Valley back then?
Yeah.
And second, do you see continuing to be here?
Yep. So our reasons for sticking around back then were pretty selfish. It was, I didn't want to move. I had a life going here. Aaron had his wife here. We were from California and wasn't, I liked Chicago at that point. So selfishly, we wanted to stay here. Now, it turns out, this wasn't foresight that we had back then, but I think that the success of Sprout would look very, very different had we gone to California. The fact that we decided to stay here, now I can tell you all the reasons why building here is a much better idea. At the time, it was just kind of a lucky state of affairs that we didn't want to leave.
So, and what do you think are some of the things that really helped with that? What made you so successful? What made this a better place to build?
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons. Probably the primary one is just the talent in the workforce that we have here. Not that there isn't talent in Silicon Valley, but it's of a different variety here. We were able to build a team not only more cost effectively. The cost of living is obviously very different. The cost of talent is very different. But also, our retention of our employee base has been outstanding. I mean, I couldn't imagine anything like that anywhere else. And the ability, especially in a software company that moves quickly, for those original employees to still be around and still have that knowledge retained and to be able to share that and help us build the culture has been incredible. So there's a cost factor, but I think the talent factor is the biggest.
Goddard at Able, who you know from YPO, who's a great founder of Big Machines and has G2 Crowd. He's got a company out there and a company here, and he said it costs twice as much for an employee out there because the cost of housing is so much higher. And he said, and you don't have the same loyalty.
Yeah.
And so they're going to have more jobs here, even at the company that he bought into out that's headquartered there, than they will here, because he feels like they couldn't have built Big Machines there in the same way because the people just don't stick with things.
And it's really, I think, counterintuitive for us to be a product that is so tightly integrated with Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and Google and these companies that are all in the valley, and for us to do that 2,000 miles away. But it absolutely has been the best decision we could have made.
That's great. So people obviously are very interested. Brad and Eric, among the most successful entrepreneurs anywhere. Talk about what were some of the benefits, and then we could talk about some of the idiosyncrasies.
Yeah.
What are some of the benefits of having two great founder entrepreneurs as investors early stage?
Certainly one of the biggest advantages we had is Brad and Eric have been very successful operators. They've built big companies. They have muscle memory on doing big things. And when you're starting out small, those things can be intimidating, and you may not be ready to make those kind of decisions and those kind of investments. But working closely with people like that who had done big things and been successful with it, and to kind of boost you up and say, no, it's all right. You think bigger, has been by far the biggest probably benefit of working with operators as investors.
Mm-hmm. They do think big, that's for sure.
They do.
If anybody read the Fortune article magazine on the new company, what do we call it? Is it Uptake? No.
You're close.
Anyway, it's massive. It's hard to get your head around. It's such a big idea. It's they definitely are big thinkers, and obviously it's really paid off for you. So, of course, on the other hand, you've got two founders who are used to having their hands on the wheel.
Yeah.
So how'd you guys navigate the fact that you weren't all driving the ship?
Yeah. There were a lot of uncomfortable conversations, and I think that's true probably with any early stage company and their investors, but they're very good at what they do, and they have a lot of confidence in their decisions and their abilities. You may also caught the theme that I carry some ego into things, and I felt like we knew what we wanted to build and how we wanted to build it and how we wanted to go to market. So it took a long time of us working together and earning each other's trust, and that we were both good at different sets of things and really kind of meshing. But it's turned out to be a huge blessing. Not the right fit for everyone. Not everyone should work with operating investors, especially ones who have been so close to the companies that they've built.
Mm-hmm. Makes a lot of sense. So let's talk a little bit about sort of where the growth happens. So you're at Groupon, you're working with Groupon, you start to realize this more sophisticated investor, you're building this new platform that brings the future. How does that insight and evolution of the product turn into an inflection point in growth?
Yeah. So we spent, as I mentioned, we decided to rebuild this product. And this was already a year in. You don't have a lot of time to prove yourself, but we're a year in, we launch a product and we say, hey, we're going to take another year to rebuild it. We spent that year building what we thought the right product was. We launched it in November of 2011. Our growth was reasonable up until then. If you squinted, you could see how it could be a really interesting business. The day we launched that new product, though, our business just took off. I mean, that's where the hockey stick came in.
What was the secret there?
So we started building in things like collaboration and multi-user capabilities. We started charging more. We added, I think Facebook was maybe a new addition at the time. But more than anything, it was more scalable. We could add to it much more efficiently than the old product. We could be a lot more nimble with it. And that just was the secret sauce. Fortunately, we didn't necessarily know that was going to turn the tides, but it did.
In terms of how does it happen, how does it get managed? People. There is no way that I could do it if I was the person in charge. I want to be honest, because it is amazing how often people say they want to glorify it, and I have so much respect for people who you look at their Twitter bio and it's a single company, or it's a series of them, and you see there was this company and then formerly this one exit, formerly this one exit. I've always run a lot of different things at the same time. I think it's made me really good at what I do in terms of marketing and in terms of business strategy.
So we're sitting here in Punta Mita,
Yeah.
enjoying ourselves, enjoying some poolside chats, and I really wanted to have you on because you're, operating in business at such a high level and have been for such a long time. And with all of the things that you're doing between digital marketer and rival brands and Platter and Praxio and all the different things that you're running, how does someone as busy as yourself manage all of that and stay sane?
Yeah, the implication is that I stay sane. No, man, it's a mess. It really is. This idea that a lot of people see and they're like, I want to be able to do what you do and have all these different companies and do all these different things. The truth is, I would probably be more successful if I just picked one of them and focused. And I drove that. It just wouldn't be as much fun. Yeah. So I don't necessarily encourage anybody necessarily take the path that I have taken in exploring all aspects of my entrepreneurial ADHD. But I do enjoy it. I enjoy being able to kind of scratch all those different itches. I enjoy being able to, see how what works in one market can be applied to another. I like the diversification of it. I like knowing that if we were to sell and exit one business, which we've done, that I would still have other things to work on.
Yeah.
Right, and so it's there. But no, I mean, in terms of how does it happen, how does it get managed? People. There is no way that I could do it if I was the person in charge of all of those different companies. So the way that we're primarily structured is we have general managers that run the companies. They really act as the president, as the operator of that business. And I'm involved in the launch stage, and I'm involved in an advisory kind of stage once it's going. But if we can't get a good, solid operator in that business, then I've learned it's best not to pursue that business.
Wow. That's really interesting. I was not expecting you to say that, especially that the focus thing, right? Like that if you only focused on one thing, you might get better results, because we have that problem too. Like feels like we're just focusing on a lot of different things and we get spread really thin. But I wasn't expecting you to say that. So that's I
want to be honest, because it is amazing how often people say they want to glorify it, and I have so much respect for people who, you look at their Twitter bio and it's a single company, or it's a series of them, and you see, there was this company and then formerly this one exit, and I've got a lot of respect for people who do focus and they pick that one thing and they go hard. It just isn't me, and it never has been. I've always run a lot of different things at the same time. I think it's made me really good at what I do in terms of marketing and in terms of business strategy. But I can't help but wonder if I, wouldn't have a few more dollars in the bank if I hadn't really just doubled down and exited.
Went hard on one.
Yeah, exited, built it to a point, sold it, flipped it.
Yeah.
Went into another one.
Yeah, totally.
But
that's very interesting.
I also can't complain.
Yeah, no, that's I see both sides.
Yeah,
totally.
And I think you have to know who you are.
Yeah.
In all aspects, whatever business you're pursuing or or career. I think you need to make sure that what you're doing aligns with with who you are and what you enjoy and what you think is fun. I wouldn't have any fun if I just only had one thing to work on all the time.
Yeah.
I've seen me do it, by the way. What I do, and I bet I'm not alone, I bet other entrepreneurs do this as well, I'll linger and then break it so that I can fix it. So it's best if I kind of get it going, get it started, and then move on to the next.
Yeah, totally. So in that, in keeping it fun and doing what you want to do, I'm sure you've built the business to kind of like fit your strong suits.
Yeah.
So what does your day-to-day involvement look like in the four big ones that you're running?
Yeah, so it really kind of depends on the season of any new business that we're doing. So when we're launching a new company, then I'm heavily involved in the day-to-day. I mean, I'm fundamentally the interim general manager, heading the marketing, heading product, and Richard Lindner, who my business partner, co-founder at Digital Marketer, he's really there more on the driving the ops in the day-to-day, keeping everything in line, doing the project management. I'm there more on the marketing side. So we have a really good, solid division of labor there. So we'll kind of partner up, have creative talent, because neither of us are that creative. So when it comes to design and video and getting that, we'll go in and get something launched. But once it reaches some point of traction, once it's doing, maybe we're looking at 30,000 a month or 50,000 a month. Once it can begin to have its own dedicated team, that's when it gets it. That's when, I step away. And normally what my day looks like, I've got a Monday leadership meeting. I used to be just morally opposed to Monday meetings because I wanted to get started, but now I've got to. And the most productive thing for me to do is to meet with, all of our leadership team. And that includes the general managers of our different divisions. That includes the specialists that help across the different divisions. Find out how are we progressing towards our company-wide goals and what are the big initiatives that we're working on. And everybody goes around and they sort of talk about where they need help. And my primary job is just to move around and help where I can. And whether that's diving in and helping in an area that I'm particularly skilled at, whether it's making some phone calls and opening up my Rolodex, whether it's just approving additional budget, if that's what it takes. I'm primarily there to unblock blockages. Kind of like a business
unblock blockages.
plumber.
I like that. And sometimes you get your hands dirty, and sometimes it's just making a connection or providing a solution.
I show up, so I generally walk in. I walk into the door on Monday, and I generally have a sense of what I'm going to do that week, kind of what my big projects are going to be. And I always start out each week with 3 big projects that I want to execute, that I believe I can complete in that week. But the third one I leave open. I've got a general idea of what it could do, but I sit there and I listen and I wait. And I think at the stage where we are, I don't get to decide what I'm going to do. There's people around me, and my job is to serve them and to do what they do. So I don't have a lot of predictability often in my in my week. Which I can complain about. But if I'm being honest, it's kind of what I like.
You kind of like it, yeah. I feel like I totally agree with that. I like the building each week as it goes.
Right.
Totally. And what's the format for those meetings? Is that all the companies together, or it's all of them? Yeah,
so the way that we're structured, so our holding company has, there's Richard, Roland, and I, who are leading the company. So I kind of am the face of it. I'll kind of, I'll CEO, so I'll be the one primarily driving the vision and communicating the vision. Richard is president. He's more managing the operational side of it, managing the day-to-day. Roland is there, who I know you've had on the show before. Roland is the deal maker. And so Roland is going to be the one who gets us into new ventures, gets us out of existing ventures through an exit. He's handling a lot of the strategic partnerships and relationships, really good on the strategy. But he primarily is not there during the day-to-day. He's not really involved in that meeting. So it's Richard and I. It is the general managers of the different companies. And then we also have specialists who do a particular area that is needed across all the divisions. So, for example, finance and accounting is centralized. And so Tom, who heads finance and accounting, he's there. HR is centralized. So if somebody's talking about needing to hire, right, that's going to get discussed at a whole. We've got content and editorial is centralized. Sales, believe it or not, is centralized.
When you say centralized, you're talking about part of the holding company, and that way you can deploy where needed across all the other 4 companies?
So our leadership team is made up of specialists, and it's made up of general managers. So general managers are essentially the CEO of a particular company. They have P&L responsibility. They're primarily revenue focused, but they drive, their own P&L. They're responsible for that P&L. They are supported by what kind of winds up working as almost an internal agency. So our sales team, we have centralized at the holding company level because it's amazing how often somebody is interested in purchasing something from Digital Marketer, but we find out, they could also use this area over here.
Wow, so you centralize sales also.
Yeah, and that's something that we went back and forth on. It may not stay that way forever. And what we do wind up placing, so creative is centralized under content and editorial. But we will, if a designer is really needed dedicated on a division, we'll have that dedicated designer that reports into this team, but they kind of sit with the centralized group because they benefit from that, camaraderie. And so it's taken a while to build the teams to do that. And it was horribly inefficient in the beginning to figure out how everything worked.
What to centralize, what not to centralize.
But now we can go and launch something new, and from day one, it has pretty world-class creative and content and editorial. It has, world-class finance and accounting and HR.
That's
So
great.
we can start a business from scratch, and the very first employee coming in is going to have, full benefits and health and all the other stuff that you wouldn't have at a traditional startup.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So what we really wanted to do is to create a company that can birth other companies, and that's what we've done.
I love that. Creating companies that can birth other companies. I love that.
Yeah, well, if you think about it, I know obviously your background is real estate, and a lot of the listeners are in real estate. It's not that different from owning a real estate holding company. You're going out there and you're buying different properties, and you're going to centralize. You're going to have people that they can be on the acquisition side or on the sales side across multiple properties. But in a sense, if you've got especially a multi-tenant building, that's operating kind of on its own P&L. Right?
Yeah.
So I do the same thing. It's just we're building more of a portfolio of companies as opposed to a portfolio of properties.
Because it is almost identical. Like each property would be in its own LLC, potentially have its own, but then you could centralize property management across the board.
And on our centralized, the underlying LLCs, they do pay fees to those companies. So they have contracts. So if we were to go and sell one of those companies, the contracts could be preserved. So we sold a business, last year we sold off our event, Traffic and Conversion Summit.
Right.
Well, that event, Traffic and Conversion Summit, which was its own separate company, had contracts with Digital Marketer to do the marketing and the programming. It had contracts with Boost Events, which is our internal events company. Well, we sold that business, and yet we maintain the cash flow
the contracts.
and the contracts from those, which is not, again, too dissimilar from a property holding company selling off a business and maintaining the management contracts.
Love
and by the way, that's where we got the idea.
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit here and pretend like we came up with this all on our own.
It's pretty slick, though.
I
like it.
We looked across different groups that do it. So
very cool. What about in your day-to-day, do you have an assistant?
Oh, yeah.
Multiple?
No, well, okay. So I sort of have multiple. So I have an executive assistant who is virtual. I never in a million years thought that would work, because I had tried it, and it was great.
I need to know about this.
So I'll give a plug. I have nothing. I know the owners and they're great people, but I am not incentivized in any way to plug them. But Belay Solutions.
Belay.
Like
mountain.
Yeah, like on
repelling.
Belay. Yeah, BELAY. BelaySolutions.com. They will find a person. So they have you do personality tests. They have virtual assistants doing personality tests. So they'll kind of match you up, because it's a pretty intimate role.
Totally.
And they're working primarily with stay-at-home moms who they want to work part-time. So they're generally based out of the States.
That's great.
And so we got connected there, but I would have a really hard time operating, because she manages all my calendar. She's in my inbox. Everything.
How are you able to? Because we've tried a couple virtual assistants, especially at actually your assistant level, and just haven't been able to crack the code. Like, how are you managing this person and communicating? Is it email only?
So again, I got to give credit to Belay. So not only do they help source the person, but they also essentially onboard both of you and teach you how to work together.
Oh, that's great.
And what they said you need to meet twice a week via Zoom. You got to be looking each other in the eye, face to face. And I told them, I said, that's crazy. We can just do a call. And even she was like, I don't want to do it face to face.
Yeah.
That means I got to put on makeup before I get on the Zoom call and all this other stuff.
I got to get out of my pajamas.
Yeah, and it's in the morning for me, and I'm in Texas, I'm in Austin, and she's in California. So if we're meeting, at 9 a.m., then for a quick check-in, then that's pretty early for her.
Yeah.
And they said, look, just do it, try it. And one thing for me, if I pay somebody money, I will trust them implicitly. I'm going to do what you tell me to do. I'm going to have my own opinions and ideas. And if what you're doing doesn't work out, I'm going to revert to mine, but I'm going to fully trust you. Because you know this, we have people that hire us and pay us, whether we're doing consulting or they're in a mastermind, and they just want to freaking argue with you when you give them ideas. And having been on the other side, I refuse to do that to other people. It's like, fine, I'm going to trust you implicitly, and I'm so glad I did, because it worked. We every Monday at 9 a.m. we've got a check-in, unless if I'm out of town or something, we don't do it. And we just go over, here's my calendar for the week. She points out things that I need to keep an eye on. She'll say, hey, you've got this email in your inbox from this person. It takes 20 minutes. And and that kind of sets the tone. We'll have a check-in again on Thursday morning. And sometimes if everything's smooth, it's
5 minutes.
Do you need it?
Yeah.
And but we really try to maintain that. But that's it. So
that's awesome.
We talk for 20 minutes.
And does she manage your email inbox?
Oh yeah, yeah. I could not live if it were not for that. So she manages my calendar, my email inbox, books the travel. So when an email comes in to my inbox, if it's something that I absolutely do not want her to respond to, I move it into a folder that is just Ryan's inbox. So a separate folder that I set up, I move it in, she knows, don't touch it. If it's something I absolutely want her to respond to, I move it into a to respond. But there might be a day or two where I don't check my email. So if it's something that she's sort of questioning, she'll leave it there for a bit and say, hey, something came in from this person, it looks important. And so over the last couple of years, she's gotten to figure out what's important, what isn't.
Yeah.
And when in doubt, what she will do is she'll respond from my inbox saying, to somebody saying, hey, this is Serena, Ryan's assistant. Just want to let you know, Ryan's out or Ryan's busy or, but I'm going to make sure that he sees this when we meet again on Thursday. Just wanted you to know you're not being ignored and all. I was nervous when she started doing it because what if a friend, what if you email me and then you get a response from her? Are you going to think that I'm just a total pompous prick that I've got?
Yeah.
Everybody loves it.
And I don't think so.
Right,
yeah.
No, everybody's like, oh, great, thank you.
I think it's more just getting a response.
Exactly.
Oh, you're busy? That's cool.
Yeah.
Get back to me next week or
all
whatever.
of my fears around it just wasn't that big a deal. And now there's so many people that she'll be like, do you really need to talk to this person? No, I don't. Let them know that I'm busy. I'll try to get with them, later. But between that, I've got very specific points in my calendar that are blocked off for when outside meetings can be scheduled, and it's just a couple hours a week. So she can, just at her own liberty, book those for me if she deems it appropriate. Or I'll say, hey, make sure it comes in. But even if I do respond, I'll CC her in the email and say, hey, Serena, can you make sure you book a meeting?
Right.
Because I'll tell you, the back and forth of trying to get on somebody's schedule,
oh my God, it's painful.
Takes forever. And so to be able to hand that off, that is one of my single biggest kind of productivity hacks, if you will.
Yeah, I just haven't been able to let go yet, but I'm so at that point because I'm overwhelmed by emails and just need to let go of that.
And I don't maintain, inbox zero at all times, but it stays pretty light. It stays very manageable. And she'll tell me, she'll just, hey, you still have this on your inbox.
Yeah.
And so knowing that she's watching it gives me a sense of freedom that I don't have to have anxiety about it.
Love it.
So, and I think as entrepreneurs, busy professionals, mastering that inbox is important.
Totally.
And having somebody to help you with it is important. I also have, I mentioned I've got kind of two. My mom also helps us out a lot. And so my mom handles a lot of the personal stuff because frankly, if you can't trust your mom, who can you trust? And so a lot of the kind of the day-to-day type things, I've got, mom on the payroll because
good for you.
When the Southern boy, you make money, you put mom on the payroll.
Bring the family in.
Yeah, exactly.
Heck yeah.
So.
That's great, man. I love that. So you started selling ebooks in 1999. That was kind of your start to the digital marketing thing. And then how did it go from that to what it is now, digitalmarketer.com, basically the 800-pound gorilla, the trusted authority in the digital marketing space?
Well, I started selling ebooks just because I needed some extra money. I didn't necessarily set out to launch an online business or anything like that. In 1999, if you were selling things online, generally people were looking at you a little bit sideways. At best, they thought that you were doing stuff on eBay. At worst, they assume you're in porn. I mean, not kidding. They were just people didn't trust online yet.
Yeah,
it was
what
still
is this internet thing?
Right, everybody's still wondering, is this even going to be a thing? Is this a fad? You think about back then how go back and read the old articles about Amazon, talking about just what a joke their business was and how now today they didn't age well.
Yeah.
But for me, I just needed to make some extra money. I was poor, like a lot of college kids, and I had some grants and student loans, and that was enough to basically pay tuition and help pay rent. I also had a part-time job, and that kind of bought food. But if I wanted anything else, I needed to figure out. And I've always been entrepreneurial. I've always been willing to go out there and sell stuff and try things. So I got a job as a web designer at a company. I didn't know how to design websites, but I figured if I got the job, I could learn over the weekend. And so I figured out how to just very basic web design and Microsoft front page. Well, that company wound up going out of business after maybe a month or so of working there. So I began advertising my services as a web designer.
Now you're a freelancer.
Now I'm a freelancer, right? So now I am an entrepreneur. Well, I only got one client, and this one client was a lactation consultant.
Oh,
which
interesting
I don't know
service.
if you know exactly.
Yeah.
So now I have 4 kids. My wife nursed all of them. I love these people, generally women. The work they do, I think, is amazing. As a 19-year-old kid, it was awkward.
Yeah, totally.
But, you know, she wanted me to build her a website, and she was willing to pay, and so I said, fine. Well, unfortunately, she wasn't able to pay. Her husband lost his job. She had to go back to work. I built the website. She couldn't pay me. But she had this ebook produced on how to make your own baby food. Really smart lady, because she realized that once she taught, you know, a mom how to nurse, she was kind of done. And then once that kid was weaned, she was definitely done. So she really wanted to kind of transition, almost upsell.
The upsell, yeah, right.
From nursing into kind of just childhood nutrition, how to make your own baby food. So she had this ebook created so ahead of her time, just a simple PDF ebook. And she's like, look, I can't pay you, but you can have the ebook. And I'm thinking to myself, what am I going to do with a freaking ebook
what am I gonna do with
how to
this?
make your own baby food? I figured, I know how to design a website. I know how to get websites ranked in search engines. At the time, it wasn't even Google that you were going for. You were trying to get ranked in like Alta Vista and Lycos and some of these other ones. And so built a simple website, put it up for, I think, for sale for $14. I think I had a PayPal link because PayPal was brand new back then. And I remember after a couple days seeing a sale come through and thinking it was fake.
Yeah,
like having to go back and check it. And I remember going and looking at the order info and trying to figure out, okay, that seems like a real name.
Yeah.
That seems like a real person. Like this, I think, is real. And
this
then
internet thing might actually work.
Yeah, and delivering the ebook, and then I made another sale and another sale, and then I just remember one day having the thought, what if I had 100 of these? What if I didn't just have one ebook? What if I had 100? And so the business just became trying to figure out what were people searching for that search engines of the day were not serving up valuable information.
And playing matchmaker.
Yeah, if I could intersect the needs of the market where they were looking, which at the time was some of these early rudimentary search engines, if I showed up, there were no other thing than people would pay for mine. And this was at a time when nobody believed that you could pay for content.
Totally.
Well, nobody told me that.
You're way ahead of your time at this point.
Nobody told me they couldn't.
Yeah.
Right? And so I did it. So by the time I graduated from college, because I made my first sale in 1999, college dorm room as a freshman. By the time I graduated from college, I had over 200 of these little websites, selling little ebooks, little pieces of software, doing some lead generation, some affiliate things, and was making really, really good money. Like especially for a kid right out of college.
Right out of college, yeah.
And make a long story short, people started asking me, what are you doing? I remember going to marketing conferences, which, back in the early 2000s, there weren't that many of them.
Right.
And they were really small.
It's like
and here
35
I am,
people there.
Yeah, and I'm a kid, right? I'm an actual child. They're like, what are you doing? I'm explaining to them. Before long, they're dragging me up on stage, asking me to teach what I'm doing.
No way.
And then people are saying, well, do you have a book on that? No. Do you do consulting? No. And after enough people asking, I finally said, yes, I do now. And that really is how Digital Marketer was born. It started out as a simple little email newsletter where I was talking about what I was doing that was working, and partnered up with this guy, Perry Belcher, probably about a decade after launching this thing. We started doing some stuff. He said we should put on an event, and so we did Traffic and Conversion Summit. And it was after the third Traffic and Conversion Summit, and looking at in a room of almost 1,000 people, that we said, this might be a thing. We should treat this like a business, and that's when Digital Marketer was born.
Wow.
But Digital Marketer was born out of doing. I think that's what's always made us different. We just shared what we were doing. Never tried to be in the business of teaching marketers to marketing, and the only thing you've ever done is teach marketing to marketers.
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying.
Being authentic, actually having results to back it up. Love that. And then fast forward, now you've kind of become famous or well known for the one-page marketing plan and the customer value journey.
Yep.
Can you speak on how you kind of created that and how that fits into the bigger picture of things for you guys?
Yeah, so I mean, I kind of jumped ahead in the story. So 99 made the first sale by 2003, had a really good business, and then about a decade later had a really big business. Well, what happened kind of in between that time was I had a significant business failure.
Okay.
All of my websites and all my model was really centered around SEO, ranking in Google, free traffic from Google.
Yep.
And then in 2006, there was a really significant algorithm shift. And almost overnight, all my sites were wiped.
Just got
from
bumped.
the face of the search engines.
Wow.
Yeah, they were just gone. And I didn't know how to recover. I was a one-trick pony. And so that I began, buying ads. I got to learn this advertising thing now. And right about the time I got, pretty good at it and figured it out, I was also about $250,000 in debt. So it was an expensive learning process.
Wow.
And I just remember the realization that I'm out of cash, bank account wise. I can't get any more loan money. I'd maxed out my credit cards. I'd maxed out my line of credit. You figure in 2006, if you could fog a mirror, you could get credit, because this was before the
the crash.
Yeah, before the crash. But even still, there was only so much credit you could get when you're a self-employed person. And I just remember having this realization that, like, I'm broke. Like, I'm done. I'm not going to be able to do it.
And not only that, but your income source is dried up.
Yeah. And
Wow.
and so I'm thinking, I was sitting at a bar at the Hilton Anatole in Dallas, Texas, by myself, and drinking. I remember thinking, I'm either going to figure out how to fix this before I leave, or I'm going to leave, go to bed, and go back and start applying for jobs, which would be weird for me because I never really had one of those.
So you were literally at the crossroads. This is crunch time.
Yeah, it was done. And I remember a conversation I had with a buddy of mine. We were talking about, isn't it interesting how so many great business ideas were written on the back of a napkin, right? You think about the story of Southwest Airlines and, drawing like the triangle between like Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, like let's just do that. And so many, there were companies in the late 2000s that were getting funded by their idea on a napkin. And I don't know why, just in that moment, that conversation popped into my head. And I looked up, and right there kind of in front of me on the bar was a stack of cocktail napkins. And so I grabbed it, I borrowed a pen from the bartender, and I said, I told myself, if I can describe how my business actually makes money on this napkin, then I'm gonna give it another go. If I can't, then it's too complicated, I don't actually know what I'm doing. And what I drew out on the napkin, I said, well, I need to generate traffic, and that traffic needs to come into a landing page where I, get a lead. And then once somebody opts in, I need to make a small offer. What back then we called a self-liquidating offer, term I heard from Dan Kennedy, what was later, retermed a tripwire by Perry, or an entry point offer. So I'm gonna lead magnet to tripwire, and then I'm immediately gonna offer them something else. And if they don't buy any of these things, I'm gonna put them in a follow-up series and try to bring them back over here. And what I drew out on that napkin was a basic funnel, a very basic marketing funnel. And I remember looking at it and going, that's it.
That's simple.
That's it. I need to get back to doing what I was doing from the get-go, all the way back in 1999, where what if I had 100 of these things? What if I just cranked out one simple thing? I let my business get way too complicated. I moved in 15 different directions. There was no consistency across any of them, no standardization, no process. Every one of them was completely different. And I realized, like, I had made it too complex. So I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna look at the businesses at the properties I own that are actually making money. And I just shut down all but about 6 of them. And I said, I'm gonna execute this on just those 6, and I'm just gonna start making money. And that's what I did. And so I had this napkin, I literally had it framed, and I just kept referring back to it. And that year I went from almost broke to generating $1 million in revenue from those 6 sites.
Wow.
So I call that kind of my $1 million napkin.
Yeah.
In telling that story to other people and kind of evolving it over the years, it's now a similar version, what we now call the customer value journey, is sort of the new napkin. It's just gotten a little bit bigger, but it's still on one page.
Yeah, yep.
But I still tell people, if you cannot articulate how your company creates customers from scratch, Okay, that is the single most important question that every business must answer. How do we generate customers from scratch?
Yep.
And if you cannot articulate that and visualize that on a single sheet of paper, it's too complicated and you're not going to be able to grow. And so, started with a napkin, became the one-page marketing plan, the customer value journey, and we still apply that same methodology to every single business we go into now.
Today.
Yeah.
All off that one napkin from that one bar in Dallas.
And that napkin is still framed in my office.
I love that.
The ink is fading. Maybe by the time it fades completely, the lesson will be fully established. Because if I look back on every screw up that I have in business that's really significant, since then, it's when I deviated from the napkin.
Why, goddamn, why did that guy do that to me? Why did that person do that to me? Why did that person rip me off? Because you still have some of that junk in your life. At least I did. Maybe you don't. Keep in mind, I didn't have kids until I was 51 years old. I didn't have kids because I knew I wasn't ready to be a father. I was married to this business, to this dream that I had. To get somewhere else, you must leave where you are. You will never, ever experience great change in your life unless you're willing to give up something that you have right now. You may not know this, but I have a big sensitivity towards women because I was dependent upon my mother. My mother took care of me. And when my father passed, I remember walking, I'm like this tall, I'm like Sabrina's size or Scarlett's size, and I would wander into my mom's bedroom and I would just stand over her and to make sure she was still breathing because I just lost my dad. So I'm just like, am I going to lose my mom too, right? So I had this tremendous dependency on this woman that would raise myself, my twin brother, and 3 other kids. And so I've always had this connection with women. I have 2 older sisters that mentored me and guided me. And when I was lost and struggling and wandering around, one of my sisters came up to me and said, "What are you doing?" And it just like, and I didn't even have an answer for it. So I went about putting my life together at 25. I would not meet Elena for 20 years. Is that right, Elena? 20 plus years. And when I met her, by the way, I met a bunch of women along the way that I wanted to be my wife, but I wasn't ready. And Elena's probably talked about this, about you got to get you ready. If you're getting junk in your life, it's because you have some junk in your life. And nothing bad happening to you. It's happening because of you. It's basically, oh, wow, it's just a reminder. You hate it, but like, wow, goddamn, why did that guy do that to me? Why did that person do that to me? Why did that person rip me off? Because you still have some of that junk in your life. At least I did. Maybe you don't. Maybe bad shit's just happening to you. You're just a victim. Well, I decided I didn't just want to be a victim, that it was actually better for me to be in a position to say, oh, no, I'm making that happen to me. Because if I'm a victim, oh, my God, I can't even change it. So I couldn't find the right woman, and trust me, ladies, I was trying. But it was mostly like I was literally just trying to find this woman that I could do something with. Keep in mind, I didn't have kids until I was 51 years old. So I knew I didn't have kids because I knew I wasn't ready to be a father. I was married to this business, to this dream that I had. And when I met Elena, and I always talk to you guys about, man, to get somewhere else, you must leave where you are. You will never, and I'm going to tell you this for everybody in the room, you will never, ever experience great change in your life unless you're willing to give up something that you have right now. Every single time in my life, I have had to give up something I wanted. I'm not talking about getting rid of the bad stuff. You got to get rid of something that you actually worked for to get. Might have been the house. It might have been, oh, my kids are in the best schools now. It's going to be something painful. For you to get to the next place, you have to give up something that you worked for really, really hard. So I sold my house. One day I had this cognition, hey, to get what you want, you have to give up what you have. That has been true for me throughout my entire life. I had to leave Lake Charles, Louisiana. Went to Houston, had to leave Houston once I got comfortable with my community and my friends. Had to leave San Diego, had to go to LA. LA is a pit compared to La Jolla. Nobody goes from La Jolla, California up to Los Angeles. Nobody does that. You'll leave Kansas City to go to Los Angeles because you want to be an actor. I met Elena within 5 minutes of arriving in LA. I sold my house. I didn't leave it vacant as a backup plan. I left this house, okay? Like, I couldn't buy this house today if I wanted to. It was so, like, it was a precious little treasure. I had to give that up. By the way, I had to give up being the mayor of my little town. Everybody knew me. There wasn't a restaurant I couldn't walk into. I could always get a seat. I could always get the best seat. I had it right in my hand. This is what I'm telling you guys. You have to be willing to give something up, and the moment you do, you better have your partner on your side. Whoever's in your life, mom, whoever's the big influence, that significant other person in your life, that you're going to consult, that everybody's going to consult. Every one of you are going to, hey, what do you think? Should I? You better have that person on your side. In my case, I was by myself. So my consultant was like, you going to do this, dog? I called my buddy, Dale. Dale, you think I should? He's like, you're miserable, bro. You got everything you want and you're miserable. He's like, what do you have to risk? Sold the house, went to Los Angeles, lived in a hotel. I went from a house on the ocean to living in a hotel. The hotel room was probably like, I don't know, maybe the size of this stage. So please, please do whatever you got to do this weekend to figure out whatever you got to do to get rid of whatever is holding you back, most of which is something you worked hard to get. Okay? Maybe before the weekend's over, you could write down 2 or 3 or 4 things you worked really hard to get that you think you're supposed to keep. You got them already. You got it. You already did that. You don't have to keep it. That thing that you're trying to keep may be keeping you away from the thing you need to become. Thank you so much for having me here. Elena, I love you to death.
Thank you, Greg
God bless
Gardner.
Lots of people who weren't used to purchasing online started doing so after the pandemic. If you're not online, you gotta do so. You gotta push it. If you are a store owner, selling things on voice search, make sure you're leveraging it. You can also get your podcasts, your materials, your content on voice search. That's another good trend that you should start leveraging, and it's extra traffic that you didn't have. So let's first go over the good. Direct to consumer. D2C e-commerce segments will continually see a boost in sales and traffic from digital marketing. Data from eMarketer, US direct-to-consumer e-commerce sales, including both digital native and established brands, generate $111.54 billion, making up 14% of total retail e-commerce sales. Lots of people who weren't used to purchasing online started doing so after the pandemic. So if you're not online, you gotta do so. You gotta push it. And when we're looking at commerce, we're also noticing big booms in people hiring law firms, finding their local dentistry. They're doing all their research online for even the offline businesses, and we're seeing that as a big trend. The next good trend that we're seeing in 2022, we've seen a boom in voice search. When we look at our clients at our ad agency, NP Digital, we've seen a 6% already increase in voice search during pandemic months. And that trend has continued. And when people are doing voice searches, we're also noticing the bigger thing is voice search for commerce, and that's where we get the 6%. So make sure that your clients are pushing and trying to leverage voice search commerce, or you yourself, if you are a store owner, selling things on voice search, make sure you're leveraging it. You can also get your podcasts, your materials, your content on voice search. That's another good trend that you should start leveraging, and it's extra traffic that you didn't have. Another big trend that we're seeing is live videos are booming. People are getting tired of the content that they're seeing on Netflix, Disney+. A lot of these places aren't keeping up with the demand, so they're looking for live content. We're seeing live content doing around 13% better after the pandemic started versus before. So make sure that you're leveraging live content and do it across all brands, and you can leverage platforms like Restream to go after all the brands like YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. So that way when you broadcast through all of them, you'll do better and get a bigger audience. Let's go over the bad. You can expect competition to increase in more niches. Companies were forced to go online after the lockdown. And that just means it's going to take more time to get results, it's going to be harder to get results, and you just got to put in more effort and play the long game. The ugly, the end of cookies in browsers like Chrome. Personalization for small businesses that don't buy lots of data is going to be harder. here's what you should do, right? You shouldn't worry about, hey, on the iPhone, Facebook's screwed. They can't target as good, so I can't spend as much money. Don't worry about the things that you can't control. Let the platforms like Facebook and Apple and Google figure out those problems. That's not anything that you or I can solve. But what you should be doing is, one, going omni-channel. Leverage all the channels out there. It used to be where you can build a business off of one channel. Facebook grew through the invite flow through email. Hey, John invited you to join Facebook. Click here to join. That doesn't work anymore. That one channel isn't ineffective. It just isn't as effective as it used to be. So you have no choice but to leverage all the channels. The second thing you need to do, because marketing is more competitive and expensive, is leverage conversion rate optimization. This allows you to spend more money on paid ads and scale up faster. And the third thing that you need to do is increase the average order value per customer. Doesn't matter if you're services or you're selling commerce. So you can do upsells and downsells if you're selling physical goods, like Skincare by Elena. When she sells anti-wrinkle cream, she may upsell you on a vitamin C serum that also helps reduce your wrinkles faster. And if you're service-based, just when you close a business, add other products and services as quick as possible. So that way people are more integrated in your business, which allows you to increase your lifetime value of a user and spend more time and energy on digital marketing.
The thing that I'm super passionate about, as a lot of you know, is I think work ethic is the one thing that's super controllable. You're only so pretty, you're only so smart, you're only so fast, you're only what you are. The one thing that I'm fascinated by as you sit here, the way you were parented, where you were born, what you got, the one thing that actually is in your control is the decisions of what you do with your hand. My definition of success for me is to be able to do what I want to do at all times, always, and be happy about it. Having freedom is everything.
Has that changed over the years?
No, but I don't think I didn't realize what was going on in my youth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, no, I wasn't, it's hard for you to really know yourself completely at this point. You'll look back and realize it was all the same shit, but articulating it takes time within yourself and also just takes time of you actually executing on it. Back to the sub-context of what we're talking about here, one of my biggest problems right now of everybody who's trying to make positive impact is they're doing semantical work, not actual work, right? They're jockeying for their personal reputation by what they wear or what hashtag they use, not necessarily what they're actually doing. And if they actually ask themselves, once they actually embrace the fact that they're being selfish, then they can become selfless. When they're posturing to selflessness and disguising it, their true selfishness, they're losing, because that will play out. And that is the vulnerability of being over woke. That's the vulnerability. And the reason I like saying them out loud is because people aren't saying that part out loud, which then doesn't allow a lot of this good to actually be effective. And then it starts getting into delusion. There's so much I love about, making the world a better place, but it has to be practical. I would be thrilled if the government decides to wipe out all these college debts, but let me promise you what the reaction to that's gonna be. Even worse behavior. Watch what the 27-year-old does when you take $230 off her bill. Watch what she then does for the next 20 years. It's not gonna be as good as people think. The thing that I'm super passionate about, as a lot of you know, is I think work ethic is the one thing that's super controllable, right? A lot of us were born with what we were born with, right? You're only so pretty, you're only so smart, you're only so fast, you're only what you are. The one thing that I'm fascinated by as you sit here, the way you were parented, where you were born, what you got, the one thing that actually is in your control is the decisions of what you do with your hand. It's like a great poker player, right? A great poker player doesn't need the best hand every time to win. It's how she or he navigates with that hand. We're not gonna change who we are or where we were born or to whom we were born with. But no matter where you are in the life cycle right now, we all have the opportunity to start looking at it a little different. And to me, very frankly, I just think we spend an enormous amount of time on dumb shit when we have ambition to do so much more. Now look, you do you. I'm not interested in peddling being a workaholic. I'm really not. You can do whatever you want. The happiest friend I know from growing up, I think he makes $50,000 a year. He's on 17 fucking softball teams. He fucking takes every vacation day off, and he's happy as shit. And I love him, and it makes me so damn happy. I have friends who were early employees at Facebook. They have $100 million in a bank, and they're miserable, and it's shit. This is not a money conversation. This is very simply, do your actions back up your mouth? To me, looking at the hashtag, looking at people talking about this, looking at their social media, when I have the whole East Coast to West Coast long flight, I get into a lot of work. I get all my work done, and then I start looking at all of your social media on the way here. And I look at the hashtag, and I see what you said about the earlier speaker, and I do my thing, right? The thing that fascinated me a lot about this conference is you got a lot of people peacocking in this organization. AKA, a lot of you were talking big shit. And I don't mean about this conference. I went back and looked at all your tweets. Did you know there were 37 billionaires sitting with us today? I'm fascinated by that. I'm fascinated because we're sitting in a world right now where entrepreneurship is on a pedestal of cool. So everybody's flocked to it. And everybody's talking about how they're gonna crush it and what they're gonna do and who they're gonna be. And then you look at their content, and every Friday night, they're at a fucking concert. And every Sunday morning, they're this, and every Tuesday afternoon, they're that, and they watch a shitload of fucking Netflix, and they're incredible at fucking Candy Crush, and fucking. And so, I go on this rant, not to do anything or to razz or to fucking call anybody out. I'm just asking a very simple question. I promise you, if you wanna be pumped professionally and personally, there's one thing that will drive you to the biggest success. It's called self-awareness. Do you know who you are? Do you know what you're about? Are you actually talking about shit that you care about? Are you talking because 3 or 4 people that you love talk that game and you just feel like you've got to fit in or appease your mom or dad or uncle or aunt or grandmother's ambition? The thing that helped me so much was just self-awareness. In 4th grade, I punted school because I knew I sucked at it. I knew that I could make $3,000 a weekend as a 10-year-old selling baseball cards, but I couldn't spell 90% of the words that were being thrown at me. It was just who I was, it was how I was wired. And I implore everybody in this conference to really think about this incredibly interesting thing, which is when you're self-aware and you can get to that place of understanding yourself, I implore you to triple down on your strengths and punt your weaknesses. This country is really good at selling down our throats what we're not good at. We're always being sold what to fix. I truly believe that most of the people in this room will succeed by not addressing those things. Now, something could be fatal, right? Like something could really hurt you. But I think you need to just lift those, get them to a certain place so they're not a vulnerability, and triple down on your charisma, and triple down on your salesmanship, and triple down on your work ethic. Whatever those 3 to 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pillars are, it's fascinating when you study who's winning and who's not. It's the people that have the confidence to suck at shit that are winning. I can't read, right? Like, I'm terrible at it. Like, reading a 2nd grade book to my daughter's like, you sure you want to read me? You should go look a bird. Yet, standing in front of 800,000 people, I'm like, cool, I'm good. Like, we need to start thinking more and more, and as you're going through your careers right now, I implore you to be confident in what you're good at and to punt what you suck at, because I promise you, everybody else sucks at shit too. Everybody's got strengths and weaknesses, and I'm fascinated by people's obsession to pour all their efforts into fixing their weaknesses, which is playing defense, and not tripling down on strengths.
If you don't understand the type of content that you want to create, you're not going to do a good job. If you don't write content that you're passionate about, that you love, it won't come across as great content and it won't do well. You need to research your audience. You need to come up with audience personas. What questions is your audience asking? What problems do they have that you can help solve? How can you provide value to them? And by knowing this, it ensures that not only are you writing content that you love, but also that other people want to hear about, which will help you rank higher as well. Content marketing is still one of the cheapest and most effective ways to get targeted visitors hitting your website on a regular basis. And according to HubSpot, marketers who prioritize blogging efforts are 13x more likely to see a positive ROI. Hey everyone, I am Neil Patel, and today I'm going to break down the beginner's guide to content marketing in 2020. Step 1, define your goals. What is your niche? What type of content are you looking to create? What do you want to do with your content? If you don't understand the type of content that you want to create, you're not going to do a good job. Everyone thinks it's just about your audience, but you're the one creating and writing it. If you don't write content that you're passionate about, that you love, it won't come across as great content and it won't do well. So you got to first figure out, what do you want to write about that you think people want to hear? And that leads me into the second tip. You need to research your audience. You need to come up with audience personas. What questions is your audience asking? What problems do they have that you can help solve? How can you provide value to them? And by knowing this, it ensures that not only are you writing content that you love, but also that other people want to hear about, which will help you rank higher as well. And you're probably also trying to figure out, hey, how do I figure out what problems people have? Well, type in any keyword within your vertical, your niche, into Ubersuggest, go into the keyword ideas reports, click on questions. It'll show you all the questions people are typing. These are the issues, problems people are having. And by you looking at this keyword base, it'll help you figure out, all right, these are the problems people are facing. Maybe I will enjoy writing on some of these topics. Tip number 3, do your keyword research. And this gets in, funny enough, to the last tip that I just gave. You're already in Ubersuggest. Ubersuggest also have a big laundry list of keywords that you could be going after. This will show you what's popular in your space, what's not, but you don't just want to go after popular keywords. You want to go after the keywords that are high intent. So kind of like the keywords that are in the conversion list, or the keywords that have a high CPC. Keywords that tend to have a high CPC tend to convert better and generate more income for the website owner. The fourth tip I have for you is content ideation. You need to come up with topics that cater to your audience. Check out what your competitors are writing. You can put in their URL into Ubersuggest, click on top pages, and that'll show you everything that your competitors are writing. Or if you want to see it based off a keyword, go to Ubersuggest, go to the content ideas report, type in a keyword, it'll show you what's hot in your space. You can also do the same thing with BuzzSumo. It's just a paid tool. Ubersuggest, you can do it for free. Or you can do the same thing with Answers to the Public, which is also a paid tool. So by doing this, it'll give you a rough idea of what's working and what's not, and it'll break it down based off of social shares, search traffic, and backlinks. And that's important because when you're looking at the content ideas report in Ubersuggest, you'll be like, oh, this is what's working for my competitors. Well, if they're getting a ton of search traffic but no social shares, that means you're just too reliant on Google. Ideally, you want pages, posts that have a lot of search traffic and social shares, because then you can diversify your traffic sources. The fifth thing I want you to do is create content that is tailored to voice search. It's estimated that roughly 50% of the searches are voice searches according to ComScore. So I want you to use structured data markup, and when you do this on your website, it'll help you get into the rich snippets. When you get into the rich snippets, it also helps Google pull your listings, your results for voice searches. That way your brand is getting out there and you can keep getting more traffic. This is important because with devices like Google Home and Alexa becoming more and more popular, you'll see this trend continually increasing. You want to be prepared for it. Last thing you want to do is see 70-80% of the searches being voice search, and then you start optimizing for it. You want to do it now before it gets to that point. The sixth thing you need to do is create videos and visual content. It's no secret that visual content and video storytelling is taking over the web. From Instagram to Facebook to YouTube, it's all super popular. And if you don't want to do videos, you can also try podcasts, or you could even try infographics. It's a way where you can use images to tell the story, and that works really well as well. And just to give you an idea, I only create 4 blog posts a month, but I publish over 12 videos a month. I see a trend in which videos are becoming more and more popular, and it's a better way to relate to an audience, to your brand, right? It helps you build that deeper connection. That's why you should definitely start creating videos today if you already haven't started. The 7th tip I have for you, leverage social media. If you're not leveraging social media, your brand's not getting out there. A lot of people tell me, Neil, my reach is continually dying. Why shouldn't I be on social media? Either way, whether your reach is dying or not, these sites are super popular. So the way to combat this and still do well from the social web is going live all the time. People like Ty Lopez, He goes live, he even sells from his live videos, converts extremely well. And through social media, you can create engaging content, videos, that still does well. Sure, driving people off to your website doesn't get as much engagement, but uploading videos still does well. The 8th tip I have for you, follow the EAT formula. EAT stands for expertise, authority, and trust. Google ended up releasing a Medic update a while back, in which they don't want people writing on content that they're not credible for. For example, I'm a marketer. If I start writing about health and when you get fevers and you get sick, should you go to a hospital or not? I'm not an expert on that. No matter how well written, how many backlinks I build, they shouldn't rank that content because that's not my expertise and it can damage someone. The same goes with financial content. I'm not a financial planner. I shouldn't be going out there and telling people how to invest their money and where not to invest their money and how to, maximize their 401k. I should stick to what I know. So you want to make sure you're adding your author bio on every page that you're writing content on, linking to your social profiles, guest posting on sites to build up your credibility, maybe even create a Wikipedia page. All of this will help. Last but not least, build backlinks. If you don't know how to build backlinks, the easiest way is go to Ubersuggest, type in the URL of any one of your competitors, click on the backlinks report. You'll see all of their pages that have a ton of backlinks, who's linking to them, the anchor text. You can use this data to figure out what pages you should replicate, who you should hit up to get those links as well.
I do think, as Sydney mentioned, that the biggest missed opportunity in content is playing it too safe. This is a short film that was produced by Caress, the body wash. So it's the world's first touch-activated film, and the way that it worked was that they had these series of videos. I hate it when that happens. Oh, the last line of this film is, could this be love forever, right? The name of the film is Love Forever. Could this be love forever? The notion of good versus good enough is often framed around quality versus quantity. And so what I want to talk about today is I don't think that quantity versus quality is a negative thing, right? I think very often those two things are in tension. Very often it looks like this, right? As the number of weekly posts goes from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or weekly posts or amount of content goes up, right, from like all the way to bajillion for some of us, the quality of that content tends to go down, right? So we see this time and again just throughout our lives, right? Like in the number of restaurants, like as the number of restaurants in a specific chain go up, the quality tends to nosedive a little bit. We see it in email lists in a marketing context, right? As the bigger your email list gets, very often the less responsive it gets. I drew this, by the way. Anybody tell? No? I might have an opening for a graphics person, just throw that out there. But I don't think that it has to be that way. I don't think that it has to be attention. I think actually that the two can coexist. I think that, that good content can actually scale, but only when you get the basics right? Only when you get the fundamentals right. And so as we look toward 2016, right, the track in here today is the future of content marketing. So as we look ahead to 2016, what I want to talk about is 3 things that I think are really key to all of us as content creators in this room, right? There are 3 keys to creating good quality, engaging content into 2016. And the 3 keys are bigger, braver, and bolder, right? Bigger stories, braver marketing, or braver marketers as well, and bolder writing and bolder tone of voice. I do think, as Sydney mentioned, that the biggest missed opportunity in content is playing it too safe, right? I think very often we have tended to play it a little bit too safe when it comes to content marketing. I just want to give you an example of this, which I just saw a couple of weeks ago. This is a short film that was produced by Caress, the body wash. It's a Unilever brand. And they published it on Instagram. They called it the world's first touch-activated film. In other words, Instagram video, right? So it's the world's first touch-activated film. And the way that it worked was that they had these series of videos. There was 12 of them all together. And when you tapped on them, it showed you a 15-second segment of this Instagram film, right, of this first touch-activated short film. So the story consists of this super hot woman going in. She looked a lot like me, actually, now that I think about it. Anyway, the super hot woman going into a nightclub. And she walks in, she's dressed beautifully. She walks into the middle of this nightclub, and she starts sort of dancing in the middle of the nightclub. And as she does, she's sort of caressing her skin, as you do when you're dancing alone in the middle of a nightclub, right? So she's caressing her skin, and as she caresses her skin, there are little, like, rose petals that fly off of her skin. And they attract the attention of a waiter across the room. And the waiter across the room is like, me? And she's like, yeah. And so he takes off his waiter jacket, as you do when you're a waiter and a woman across the room sees you. And then turns out this guy's an amazing dancer. And the last line of this film is, I just blanked it. I hate it when that happens. Oh, the last line of this film is, could this be love forever, right? The name of the film is Love Forever. Could this be love forever? I mean, it's okay, right? But in my mind, it sort of didn't quite go far enough. It had okay engagement, right? The story itself was a little thin, but this is my favorite part. And for those of you in the back who can't read it, it says there was like 2 comments on this. One's talking about the music, that it has a Seinfeld vibe. And the other one is, I guess I'll comment since nobody else did. That's brutal, right? I don't mean to pick on Unilever. Actually, there's some super talented people that worked on this, but I think the problem with it is that it's an ad, essentially. It's a product-centered ad. And instead of using Instagram, I think Instagram is an amazing social platform, right? It's an amazing tool. It's an opportunity to tell different kinds of stories. But instead of doing that, essentially what they did is they took an ad and they crammed it into these 15-second segments and called it content marketing. And then they invented this sort of silly term about touch-activated, caressed, if you will, filling, which in my mind, is just not kind of pushing things far enough. I think content marketing ultimately is an opportunity to create marketing that doesn't feel like marketing, as my friend Tom Fishburne says. Instead, this is marketing that just feels like an ad.
Think about how many businesses are starting on social media every year just running ads. Of the 18,000 marketers they surveyed are planning to increase their social spend in 2022. That means that in order to stand out, you'll have to get creative and differentiate your brand from the rest of the competition. You'll need to get super creative if you want to stand out in 2022. Social networks are now the second most important channel for online brand research after search engines, according to Hootsuite and We're Social Digital's 2021 report. Social media constantly changes, but this year, it's going to be different. You're going to be prepared. Hey everyone, I'm Neil Patel, and today I'm going to break down social media trends for 2022. It's crazy how social media changes every year. I've seen platforms that get tons of engagement lose relevancy in a short period of time, like Snapchat. And I've also seen platforms like TikTok just explode in just a couple of years. As a marketer, it's hard to keep up with all these changing algorithms and all these changing social networks that are even coming out, like Clubhouse. But there's some trends that you can end up seeing developing quietly that will become the new norm. Today, I'm going to talk about some of these trends for 2022 so that you can up your game and be prepared for them in the coming months. So let's dive into the trends for 2022. Videos are going to even get shorter. Have you seen the thing called shorts? People don't create shorts because they want to. They're creating shorts because these platforms know that people love watching short 30-second or 1-minute videos. When you look at how successful TikTok videos have been, Instagram has come up with their own version of that. It's called Reels. HubSpot found that 64% of marketers plan to leverage more short-form videos in 2022. One of the reasons for that is short-form videos are brief, engaging, digestible, and can be repurposed in many different social media channels like Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and even LinkedIn, depending on your content. The next trend is marketers and companies will need to make their social advertising more sophisticated. Think about how many businesses are starting on social media every year just running ads. Just so you have an idea, a research conducted by Hootsuite shows that more than half, 51.4% of the 18,000 marketers they surveyed are planning to increase their social spend in 2022. That means that in order to stand out, you'll have to get creative and differentiate your brand from the rest of the competition. Think of it this way. If you're interrupting people on social media, you're gonna have to give them a good reason to listen to your message. It's just like getting into a party and selling your product. While everyone else just there wants to have fun and talk and engage with each other, you're trying to sell. That's hard. With social ads, you'll need to get super creative if you want to stand out in 2022. The next trend, companies will stop improvising with their social media strategy and start hiring more specialists. A lot of companies have underplayed the role that social media can play in revenue generation. Most of them typically run their social media by a committee without a specific direction or strategy, or maybe it's not even a committee, it's 1 or 2 people. Or even worse, they get some generalists to run their social media marketing for them. The problem with that is that people have higher expectations today when it comes to social media profiles from brands that they're engaging with. They want to have meaningful interactions with these brands. They want to be responsive fast and efficiently. And they almost always want to be able to call your company by phone, or at least message someone by chat or text message even. Another trend is platform diversity and omni-channel. It's become harder and harder to rely just on one social platform. I used to just be on Facebook. I used to just be on YouTube and Twitter. And then I had to add in LinkedIn and TikTok. Heck, someone the other day was like, Neil, we love your TikTok. I was like, I got a TikTok? And this actually happened a while ago, not really the other day. But when that happened, my team was like, oh yeah, we were able to get your handle, and we just started uploading videos to get us started, and we were gonna tell you and surprise you for Christmas. I was like, oh, cool, thanks. And then I started getting in there and re-engaging and just trying to boost it up. But what we've seen is engagement is at an all-time low. Yes, some networks like TikTok and LinkedIn give you great engagement, but over time, they all die down just like the rest. So you gotta have an omni-channel approach so you can get the best out of all the channels out there. A survey conducted by HubSpot discovered that 64% of marketers currently are leveraging 3 to 5 different social media platforms. I'm even leveraging more than that. So it's a trend that you can expect to continue over the coming years, since you won't be able to get all the amazing results that you used to get by just focusing on one channel. Social commerce is also a huge trend. Facebook, now Meta, conducted research that revealed that 81% of people say that Instagram helps them research products or services that's just one social network too. Imagine what happens with all the networks. Social networks are now the second most important channel for online brand research after search engines, according to Hootsuite and We're Social Digital's 2021 report. But now, besides being able to research, social media users are actually able to buy directly from social media profiles. And this trend is something that you can expect more and more in 22 and beyond. Here's another cool thing. Did you know Home Shopping Network and QVC, remember those days back, years and years ago, you would watch the channels, ring in the phone, and buy the product? At least my mom did. With those channels and that concept of selling, Facebook now has that on that platform. You can go live and start selling right then and there, tell people how you're running out of inventory, assuming that's true, and start making sales right then and there.